Welcome to part 2 of the Rover Candidacy video, working on some CAD stuff. First thing I'm going to do is come in here to this rear main beam. I forgot to name one of the components, so we'll just call this the pivot brace. I don't know what it's called, so let's go ahead and make up a name. You get to do that when you're designing things. First thing we're going to do is work on the wheel boxes. So I need some holes in this front crossbeam for those wheel boxes to pivot on. So I'll come here and activate that component. I can just go ahead and sketch right on that top face. I want the center line, so I'll do the same trick. I'll kind of slide down until I get the triangle. That's the midpoint. And I'll just come out at a certain distance. I'm going to go ahead and turn that into a construction line. I'll do the letter C for a circle. Put that on there, make that 0.5. I'm going to pull that dimension out so it's a little bit easier to see. We'll also dimension this distance from the edge of here to that circle. We'll say 1.5 inches. We'll have enough metal on the end of this to make it strong enough. Maybe we'll go we'll call it 1 inch. We'll see how that works out. If we need to change it, we can. Okay. So now that I've got that hole, everything is good there. We'll stop that sketch. Select that profile. We can press, grab the wrong one. Select press pull. I'm going to go down so it'll cut. I can go ahead for the distance. I can select face. I want the face behind this one, so if I just hold down my left mouse button, I can select this face or the bottom face. Okay, so we can cut that. Now that I've got that hole, I think this will be a great use of the mirror tool. So we'll pull that up. I don't want a face. I want the feature. I can grab it from down here in the timeline. And since I've obeyed rule number 1 and everything is nice in their folders, the timeline for this front crossbeam is really easy to find what I need. The mirror plane will be the center plane right here. So now I can see I got my other hole right over there. So now I've got the holes for the wheel boxes to pivot in. So we'll come back up here. I'm going to go ahead and right click, do a new component. We'll call this our wheel box. And unlike the other component, when I did rear main crossbeam, this is an assembly that's got more than one component in it. This one's got a body. This was its own component, and then I added another one. So that's why this is an assembly. For the wheel box, I'm not going to actually make any geometry in there. I'm going to come right here. I'm going to right click again and do another new component. And now it's going to nest component 7 under the wheel box. The wheel box doesn't have any bodies, so there's nothing actually, no body associated with the wheel box component. These other parts will be. Okay, so I've designed several of these pieces in place. I was real careful to put them exactly where I wanted them so I could do the as-built joint. But this time I'm just going to go ahead and design wherever the heck I feel like it. So I'm going to go ahead and sketch. I'll grab this plane right here. And I'll put the wheel box close to being out here, but I'm not really going to worry about getting too close. I'm going to sketch a 2-point rectangle. It doesn't have to be attached to anything. It's going to be 2 inches. I think I did about 4.5 inches last time. And once again, this isn't defined as any location, so that's why those lines are still purple. I am going to want to put a hole in this. So I'll do this to find the midpoint. This time I'll just come all the way across, right click, and make that a construction line. I'll do C for center. It's one of the few shortcuts I know. 0.5 for that circle, and place it. And then we'll also add a dimension in from this edge. For the wheel box, we'll go ahead and call that 2 inches. Let me actually look at my drawing. I have it as 2 inches by 4.5. You don't have to worry about drawings right now. This is just for me to... I had 1.5 inches in. I'll post these drawings online so you can get the same dimensions. So let me go back here, and it's just easy enough to change that to 1.5. So we'll go ahead and stop that sketch. Go back to perspective view, right click, and we'll make that just 1/4 inch thick. On the other drawing I had this big long back plate on it. If you look at both of these, the bottom part of this one is connected to our tie rod. This top one, you don't really need that, so I'll just make it that nice little rectangle. Okay. So that's one part. I need the other front part. So this will be the top plate. So we'll go ahead and name that top plate. Go back up to the wheel box. I'm going to create a new component. And this will be the end plate and shaft that our tire will sit on, or our wheel. Okay, so I can sketch that. I do know I want it on the right hand plane, so I'll come out here, select this plane. Same thing, I'll sketch this as a 2-point rectangle. Let me come back to my drawing. That end plate was 2 inches by 2.7. And this will be a good example. I'm going to change that. We'll leave this. Let me dimension this. That's 2 inches. I'm going to do this. That's 2.5. And I'll explain why I did that here in a second. I also need to put, I'm going to put a center line on here. Not just here in the vertical, but I'll also put a center line on the horizontal. And that's where I'm going to make sure that my axis of my shaft goes. I'm going to turn this into a normal line and this into a construction line, not a normal line. So I'll do C for circle, put it right there at the center, and we'll say a 0.5 inch shaft. Okay. So that should be the geometry I need for the end plate. So we'll stop that sketch. Come back over here, and this is kind of an odd place. I'm going to turn off the front crossbeam, just so it's not in my way. I'm going to extrude this and the center part. So I'll open up the extrude command, get both of those. We'll pull out 0.25. I still need that sketch, so I'm going to turn it back on. Left click, and I can grab that profile. I'm going to right click and press pull. I want that to be, I don't want to cut, I want to join. And our wheels are pretty thick, so we'll go ahead and make this, I don't know, let me see what I did over here. I did it 6.5 inches. So we'll go ahead, oops, I already did it for me. We'll edit that I want this to be 6.5 inches. Okay, so I can turn off that sketch. So this is all one body, but it's under the end plate and shaft. So that should be good. Okay, so now that we've got the end plate and shaft completed, now we can go ahead and make the bottom plate. So I will need to activate this component, do a new component in there, call this the bottom plate. Same thing, we'll sketch. The bottom plate's going to be on this same plane. I'll just do a little close by. So this time, we can do this. Let's go ahead. We'll do the same 2-inch by 4.5 rectangle. But then not only do we have this 2-inch by 4.5, but we got another 8.5 by 2.5 hanging off this end. So I'll go ahead and I'll make another rectangle on this corner. So that was 2.5, and if it's 8.5, and I've already got 2, so that'd be 6.5. Place that. I've got dimensions all over the place. I kind of move these a little bit. Oop. Move the dimensions. Okay, so I've got 2 rectangles. I can just leave that. I can come in here to my sketch tools and grab trim and delete that line so that's just one continual space. I'm going to leave them as rectangles because if I need to come in and change the geometry, I'd rather have them as rectangles so I can adjust that. I'm going to put my midpoint line once again right here. So my circle's in the middle of that plate. Change that to a construction line. I'll do another midpoint line on here. Change that to a construction line. We'll need a couple circles. We'll need a 0.5 circle there. We'll need a 0.5 circle. Whoops. Need a 0.5 circle on this piece as well. Put it. Fusion likes to be difficult sometimes. You just gotta hang in there. Okay, so that's a 0.5. We'll move this guy here so I can see that. Same thing, we'll dimension from this end out to where the hole is. Put 1.5, I can't remember what it was. I go back to my drawing. Oh, 1.5 from the end. Lucky me. And then this guy, I didn't have a dimension on this one. We'll leave this guy without a dimension right now. That's going to come into play with our Ackerman steering. Okay, so that should be good. We'll stop that sketch. Come back to the isometric view. Go ahead and start my extrude command. Grab this one and this one. We'll go at 0.25. We'll make our plate. Okay, so I can come around. I'm going to do this. I'm going to move these a little bit closer so we can kind of see what we're talking about. That's the big one, so that's the bottom plate, and this is the smaller one. So that's the top plate. I'm going to change my view to the front. Slide that over here. Slide that over there. Go back the other way. Okay. So when I look at this part, I can go back here to the wheel box, activate all of it. And we can see all these parts. And the question is, when I design this, when I actually build this, do I want to assemble it with this top plate and the bottom plate fabricated like that, or do I want to put the top plate on top and the bottom plate on bottom? And it turns out this is going to be the case that I want to do it. In my original drawing, my original design, you can see that I've got the top and bottom plates coming off the ends. They're kind of sideways. This top face is open. And that's actually going to be a weaker joint. We'll have to weld that together, and then the entire weight of the wheel is going to be on that weld. And our welds are not always perfect, so we want to help ourselves out as much as we can. So if I design it this way, then just the actual physical location of these two pieces, the load can be transferred into that just because of the position, and the weld will hold it where it is, but the weld doesn't have to hold all the weight. So when I join these things together, I want to join it in this position rather than like that. That will be weaker, and that will be stronger. So we'll go ahead, come back here. I'm going to go ahead and capture position. If I go back to revert, it'll put these things back all over the place. So I'll capture the position. Now I can do the joints. And since I kind of put them close to each other, I'm going to hold down Control, grab that bottom corner, hold down Control, grab that top corner. I want those to be rigid, and I want to flip that. Okay. And then same thing. I'm going to right click. It's called a context menu. I'm going to right click and drag straight up and go to repeat joint. I don't have to go get the command. So I'm going to grab this coin and Control, grab that front coin, flip it again, and those are good. So now I've joined together all parts of that wheel box, and we got a completed wheel box. That should be good. We'll see. So now I can go to fit, turn back on my front crossbeam. Panicked there for a second, couldn't find it. And now let's go ahead. We're going to need another one of these. I'm going to turn off my joints. We need another one of these for the other side. So I'm going to select this entire... Let me see if it'll let me mirror it. I'm not sure. Create a mirror. See, this just says features, components. I don't know if I can do an assembly. We'll see if it lets me mirror a whole assembly. Oh, there you go. Well, that was easy. Okay, so that's the other assembly. That looks the way that I want it to. So we'll select OK. And great, so I've got wheel box 1 over here on the right hand side, and I got wheel box 2 as a mirror over there on the left hand side. If I expand this, it's got my components inside of there. That worked out fantastic. Okay, and since I joined this wheel box, the joints are in this folder rather than my main folder. So it makes it a little bit cleaner. So now I can go ahead. I've got the main level activated. Got the main level activated, so I'm going to go ahead and assemble these joints. Oop, so here we go. We're going to get stuck again. I want to put a revolute joint in here, and if I select the center of this, and I come back out here and I select, I can hit Control and grab the bottom coin. It'll make a really nice revolute joint. It'll look great. We'll say OK. We'll go back to fit. But the problem is when I look at this joint, there's no longer that 0.1 gap. I need to have this scooted up a little bit. So we'll go ahead and change that joint. So the way we can fix that joint, we'll just come down here and edit the joint. And we've got the option of doing an offset in the X, Y, or Z. So in the Z direction, we'll just move it up by 0.1, and we'll hit OK. And nothing happened. So let me see. edit joint. Oh, so I moved the beam up 0.1. So then I'll change that to negative 0.1. Move the beam down. So now if we take a look at that, there you go. So I've got that 0.1 gap, and now this is too big. So this frame should be 2 inches tall, and then 0.1, and 0.1 should be 2.2. So this height of this should be 2.2. So we can come back in here to our wheel box, come in here to the end plate, come in here to the sketch where I designed it. We'll edit that sketch. And I called it 2.5, and it should have been 2.2. So hopefully with the magic of Fusion, when I come in here to look at this, there we go. I'll go back to the front side and zoom in. There you go. So I changed this to the correct height. Now I've got a 0.1 gap on top and a 0.1 gap on the bottom. So that wheel box is jointed correctly. I can grab it. It's going to pivot. That's excellent. I'm going to go back here and revert that one. I'll come over here to this one, and I'll joint this one as well. So select the joint command. Come in here and grab this. Hit Control to grab the bottom. Come over here, hit Control and grab the top. And I want to scoot this one. The first thing you select moves to the second. So this one I'll need to move up this one, 0.1. That's that Z offset again. Oop, and I forgot to... So I copied the wheel box, but it did not copy the joints. So we'll have to undo that joint. So all the things in wheel box number 2, the mirror, are not jointed together. So we'll go ahead and do that real quick. So I can go ahead, we'll do this since they're all in the right positions. I'll create a rigid group where I just select 1, 2, 3. Hit OK, and now they are all locked together now. Put this back in position. So that's a little bit faster than even jointing it or doing the joint in place. So now for this, I'll go back up to my main level. Let me close some of these things out of the way so they're not in my... So we'll do a joint. I want to do the revolute. I want to grab the bottom of this. Bottom of that plate. Top of this beam. I'm still going to do the Z-axis offset of 0.1. Okay, so now it's over there. And if I move this bar, that moves. Okay, so the last thing I need to do is put the tie rod in. I'm just going to use a flat plate to do that, just because it's going to be easier. Okay. So I'll put the flat plate on top of these things. So I'll just use, I should go ahead. I should, instead of sketching right on here, I should move it up a little bit. So same thing, we'll do that offset plane. From that top face, we'll come up 0.1 again. Okay, and I can sketch on that plane. And this time I'm going to sketch right on top of my geometry. I'm going to go from here all the way over. And we'll use a 2-inch height and then we'll leave that 45. Make sure it's on the line. There you go. Okay. I put these holes in here, but I'm not going to attach those to those holes just yet. And we'll talk about why here in just a second. I will stop this sketch, go to my isometric. This is on top, so I'm going to press pull this and we'll move it up 1/4 of an inch. So that's the last part of my steering assembly. I need to link these together. But the idea behind the Ackerman steering, which is one of the reasons why we're talking about this, is that when I move, you can go back to the one I've completed, that when I move this wheel assembly, when I move that tie rod, the inside wheel moves more than the other. So these, this is the kingpin, that's what would go in this hole, to this axle. The line made by these 2 points for the easy way to do Ackerman steering, that line needs to meet right back here at the center of that axle. So that's what's going to determine where that circle goes. So on ours, I've got a circle in here on that piece below it, but I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to need to adjust that circle. And I think I'm actually going to go ahead, I'm going to double click this, and I'm going to move this. I changed my mind. I do want this underneath. So I'm going to move it down. I'm going to move it down the -0.1 from the sketch plane, move it down 1/4 inch for the thickness of the other flange, and then another -0.1. So if I'm lucky, that should be -0.45, and that should be the correct position. So instead of being 0.1 above it, nope, I was wrong. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead, move it out of the way. I'm going to measure this piece. That's 0.25. Oh, this is also 0.25 thick. So instead of going off the bottom, I'm going off the top. So maybe I should move it 0.7. We'll go back to this piece. We'll move, and the -z distance will be the 0.25 for both of them and the 0.1 for both of them. So it should be -0.7. That looks better. And then I'm going to capture that position so it locks that move in. So now I'm going to go over here to the top. We'll sketch this. We'll fit it in so we can see everything. And it's not going to be a sketch we're going to do any geometry with, but I'm going to create a sketch. We'll start on this top plane right here. I'm going to draw a line from the center of this pivot. That's where our kingpin goes. And I'm going to zoom all the way out. Whoops. Center of that hole. All the way back here. And I didn't put a point, but I can use the grid to find the center line. I can also use the grid to find the middle of that thing. So that's the line. That's the line from this kingpin back to that point. So we can see that this pin right here is in the wrong spot. So we'll go ahead and have to move that over. So I can go back here, I can find those dimensions and scoot it over to the right or to the left. This sketch with this line on it, I should actually create that sketch on this part so I can use this line to adjust my geometry. So I'm going to undo that line. And it's this part right here where that hole is. So I'm going to go back. That's my bottom plate. So I'm going to go into this bottom plate. I'm going to open up that sketch, because that's the sketch where I defined that hole in the first place. I'm going to have to zoom out. Right here, that hole, we want to move that hole so it's on that other line. So I'll redraw that line in this sketch, and this is what will determine our Ackerman steering. I'll come back and use the grid, put it right there. We'll make this a construction line. I should really go back to this and find the midpoint, but this video is already long enough. So I go back to 8 feet to the front. And I'm going to slide this circle. It's already on the midpoint. I'm going to, oh gosh. Okay, so this sketch was out in space. This sketch was not overlapping. Okay, so this geometry is not going to line up. So let me go ahead and I'm going to, I think if I move these, they'll all move. Okay, so I'm going to project letter P. I want this circle. I'm going to say coincident. I want this circle to be over top of this circle. That's the way that they're joined up in real life. So now I've made that actually where it is in the bar. So now I can go back here. Okay, I'm going to grab this point. Oh, come on. And same thing. Move this guy back over here. We'll put him on the midpoint. So now when I zoom out, so now we can see that for this circle, it's going to be all the way back here. So this plate is not actually big enough. If we want to put it on the center, this plate's not big enough. We can either move this plate over, or we can make the plate longer. The longer we put this out, the more leverage we'll get. The more we put it over in the center, the more torque it's going to take to do our steering. So we'll do a little bit of both. We'll make this 3 inches. We'll take ourselves some more room. Instead of this circle, I guess we can just slide it back now. I just made it thicker. So I want this circle to be coincident to this line as well. So it's going to move it to that intersection. So now this steering joint is on line from the kingpin back to the back axle. So that's the correct location for that hole. So that's the proper place that we need that hole for it to line up. We'll have to do the same thing. Nope, because when I did this as a mirror, so when I moved that circle, I moved this circle as well. So I'm going to come into this part, my tie rod. I'm going to activate that. I'm going to use this circle. Tie rod. I need to put some holes in that tie rod so I can joint those things together. I'm going to come back to my sketch. This hole is now in the correct location. So I'm going to do a circle. And it's going to see the other hole. Oh, 90 to the center. My bad. Control Z out of that. Circle. I can do a 2-point circle. 1 point there. Well, I gotta get the side. Sorry about that, folks. So let me go ahead. I'll hit P for project, and I'll just project that circle on here, and then I can go ahead and use the circle command. Say OK. Use the circle command and just do center point. And that's my 1/2 inch circle. And then same thing over here on the other side. I'm going to do P for project. Now that that purple circle's on there, I can use it. I can probably just use it just like it is. I probably didn't need to make a second circle on top of there. So we'll stop that sketch. Oh, I do. Oh, I need to turn the sketch on. Thank you very much. So now I can grab that geometry. I'm going to turn off both wheel boxes. Oh, not the... Yeah, turn off both wheel boxes. I'm not sure why it's not letting me grab that circle. I wanted to put a hole on there. Let me go back to the isometric and see where that sketch is. So it's on the bottom circle. So let me left click and hold. Do that profile, right click. I have to go up this way. And it's 0.25 inches. So I can go distance to this surface. There's that hole. Whoops. Trying to move. Come over here. This one's on the bottom as well. Left click and hold. Press pull up to the surface. There we go. So now we've got holes in our tie rod. Turn back on our wheel boxes. The visibility. Go up to our main level. Turn off that sketch. Close these down. So now I can do the joint. Let's see if we can do the as-built on this component and this component to revolute around this hole. There you go. I'm okay with that. Come over here, do the same thing on this side. As-built joint. This component and this component. About that hole. There we go. So if we are lucky, and I grab my steering, they both move. Fantastic. Okay, and that's an example of the Ackerman steering. So we'll go ahead and end this video. The third one we'll put on the wheels and the seat. We'll do another loft, and we'll talk about the motion study, some appearances, and some of the component analysis.